Hey guys, welcome to the Animation Movies Recapped. This is David with you. In today's video, I will be going through a 2017 French-Canadian-American 3D computer animated adventure film called Sahara. I like the movie very much and hope you will like too. So without any further ado, let's start with the recap. At the beginning of the movie, we can see the Sahara Desert. There is a desert storm, and we are shown a group of caravans with their donkeys, all taking a rest and waiting for the storm to stop so they can commence their journey. We then see Ajar, a desert cobra, and his scorpion friend Pit, who are both trying to steal a watermelon from the stack of luggage a camel is carrying. Pit is nervous about what they are about to do and tries to change his friend's mind, but Ajar is unrepentant in his decision to make away with the watermelon. The camel soon sees the cobra on it and begins to raise an alarm to alert its owner. Luckily, Ajar and Pit are unknowingly hurled away from the scene through the stampede caused by the camel. At another part of the desert, Ajar and his friend contemplate how to consume the watermelon which they now have in their possession. They are soon interrupted by the arrival of a big snake, who bullies them and demands that they hand the fruit over to him. Pit, who is petrified, currently stings himself and falls into a deep sleep, as it is known that the venom in a scorpion's sting has the power to render one unconscious. Ajar does his best to stand up for himself and make sure that the big snake doesn't gain possession of his watermelon. But as the law of natural selection would have it, Ajar is overpowered by the bigger snake and beaten into unconsciousness. This snake is also a cobra like Ajar, but is older than him and had shed his skin, while Ajar is a young cobra who hadn't shed his skin yet. Fast forward, Ajar and Pit arrive at the home of desert snakes. Here, there are different species of snakes, and they have the desert and its rocks as their habitat. Ajar and his friend head towards where they would rest. They come across some snakes feasting on the watermelon which got from the caravans. They also see the big snake that attacked them in the desert, so they hide and gently crawl away. Unfortunately, they are spotted by the snake and they are bullied again. Some other snakes shoot venom at Ajar and Pit, who run for cover. They head to the top of a rock away from the rest of the clan and completely safe from the bullies. Ajar tells Pit how displeased he is about the treatment he receives from the clan, and he tells his friend about his intention to leave for another place to start his life. Pit asks his friend about where he intends to move to, and while Ajar gestures towards the oasis, Pit dissuades his friends from that idea. The oasis is a fertile land in the desert and has the snakes who inhabit it, and no reptile that belongs there is allowed to leave towards the desert. There is a boundary separating the oasis from the desert, therefore no desert reptile or animal is allowed to enter the oasis. The snakes are categorized into the green snakes and the dusties. The green snakes belong to the oasis, while the dusties belong in the desert. They do not relate. During their conversation, Ajar notices a female green snake sliding out of the oasis and attempting to cross the border. He's captured by her beauty and how gracefully she crawls across the ground. Her movement is halted by the arrival of a giant bird that stops her from going past the boundary and swoops her off the ground, flying back to the oasis. This bird is the chief sergeant of the oasis, charged with the sole responsibility of preventing the green snakes from leaving the oasis and also the dusties from gaining entrance into the oasis. In essence, he protects the oasis and its inhabitants. This scene that Ajar and Pit witnessed buttresses Pit's point about Ajar's intended entrance into the oasis being dangerous, but Ajar remains adamant. Inside the oasis, the snake who attempted to leave is returned home to her father. Her name is Eva, and she is the second child and only daughter of the richest snake in the oasis. At home, her father reprimands her for trying to leave the oasis, pointing out the dangers outside and the brutality of the snakes in the desert, the dusties. He reminds her of her privileges and benefits of living in the oasis. Eva does not listen to what her father says and lets him know that she does not see a future in the oasis. She goes ahead to tell him that she feels suffocated and locked up in there. After bearing her mind, she breaks into tears, walks away from her father, and collides with her delinquent brother Gary, who jokes about her. Gary is the firstborn and son of Eva's father, and also her elder brother. Eva is outside, laying under the sun and deep in thought about her predicament. There is a small pool of mud which she dips her tail into and uses to paint. While painting, Eva realizes that she could change her color by dipping herself into the mud. That way, she wouldn't look like a green snake anymore, but a dusty. On the other side, towards the desert, Ajar is seen dipping himself inside a swamp. The purpose of his doing this is to turn himself into a replica of a green snake and gain free access to the oasis. Pit warns him again, but as usual, Ajar doesn't listen, so Pit follows him. At the border, Ajar is met by one of the officers of the oasis, who allows him to gain entrance inside. Ajar and Pit walk into the oasis, marveling at its beauty. They stare in wonder at the plants, the colorful butterflies, and the flowers that the oasis consists of. While moving around, they see the most beautiful fountain of water that flows into the river. In the oasis, everything looks, feels, and smells different. Suddenly, They are jolted by a sound above them. They glance and see a group of Oasis officers flying and raising alarm about the presence of a Dusty. Pitt is scared and runs into a bush. Ajar follows him and tells him that they aren't the ones the birds are looking for, but Pitt wouldn't listen. He runs for his life. Inside the bush, Ajar searches for his friend, and he comes across a brown-looking snake. He is surprised to see a Dusty in the Oasis. Ajar doesn't know that the brown-looking snake is Eva because she had changed her color just like Ajar did. Unfortunately, the birds saw her and are searching for her, thinking she's a Dusty. Inside the bush, they are attacked by a farmer, so they run for their lives. They soon escape from him and find themselves at the edge of a cliff that has a river below it. The birds are already hot on their tails, so Eva grabs Ajar and throws them into the river. Unfortunately, Ajar cannot swim, so Eva assists him with the birds still attacking them in the river. Soon, Ajar drowns and Eva revives him by sharing air with him through her mouth. Still in the water, the paintings on both their skins get cleaned off and their true identities are revealed to each other. Ajar recognizes her as the green snake he saw and got attracted to earlier. They exchange pleasantries and their names as they swim ashore. Ajar tells Eva that he disguised himself so he could live in the Oasis, while she shares with him that she planned to leave. They are safe from the birds and are in a nice discussion when Pitt finally joins them. Eva, now seeing the gate of freedom she has always wished for, crawls out of hiding to begin her journey, asking Ajar to come with her. As she heads out, her head is caught in a stick belonging to a man. This man's name is Omar, and he is a snake charmer. He has the power to charm and hypnotize snakes and uses them for entertainment purposes. Omar captures Eva and places her in a basket tied to his camel, heading away from the Oasis. Ajar sees this and tries to rescue her, but his effort is fruitless and soon, he is sighted by the officer birds who swoop him and take fly away with him. Ajar and Pitt are interrogated by the chief sergeant and told that they will be killed for trespassing. As their execution is about to happen, Gary, Eva's brother, appears from nowhere. Ajar immediately utilizes the opportunity and gets a hold of him and threatens to kill Gary if the sergeants don't let him and Pitt go scot-free. They are allowed to go, so they take a bird along with them for easy transport. Ajar, Pitt, and Gary leave on the back of the bird to find Eva. In the custody of the snake charmer, Eva meets other snakes who work for him. They are dancers who are used for entertainment by Omar. She meets Rita, the oldest and their trainer, the twins Lily Bell and Lulu Bell, Piotr the prima ballerina of the cast, and Georgia Casanova who flirts with Eva. Ajar, Pitt, and Gary all fly away from the Oasis and many miles across the Sahara. At sunset, the bird gets sleepy and as a result of fatigue, crashes to the ground dozing off. Ajar and the other passengers find themselves on the desert sand and all attempts to wake the bird up prove futile, so they decide to continue their journey themselves. It is dark in the desert and Ajar and his crew attempt to pass through the rocks in the desert because they are a faster route to cover the distance. They are confused because they find themselves in a maze and decide to use the location of the star to get the guidance, so they would be able to move in the right direction. Gary seems to be a pain in the ass for them. He is talkative, insulting, and proud. He tries to find his way around the rocks and gets trapped in a hole. Gary shouts for help, making Ajar and Pitt run towards the sound of his voice, not knowing that there is a hole, so they too fall into the same hole. Inside the hole, they try to find their way out by following the smaller holes that serve as a pathway. At the far end of the desert, Omar's crew rests for the night, and the snakes are brought out to display and entertain his guests. Eva isn't with them, so she sets out to escape. Rita warns her that if she is caught, she would be killed and her skin used for a belt. Regardless, Eva crawls out of the basket and attempts to make her way away from Omar since he was distracted. Unfortunately, Omar's charm gets a hold of her and she is hypnotized. Eva starts to dance alongside the other snakes, who are surprised by how good she is at dancing. Ajar and his mates, after crawling around the paths in the rock, arrive at a cave. In this cave, they find light-emitting insects who Ajar asks for help. He asks them for directions to find the camel tracks, so he could trace them toward Eva, and the insects give him some sort of direction which was grateful for. Things take a great turn as the swarm of insects tries to have Ajar and his mates for dinner. They all try to protect themselves and their lives, and as luck would have it, Ajar finds a way out and helps his friends. Outside the cave, they finally see the camel tracks that they have been looking for. Far ahead is a large amount of land covered by the desert, and the journey poses to be a very difficult one. Gary tries to dissuade Ajar from them embarking on the next phase of the journey. He tells him that Eva, his sister, has probably been eaten by wild animals. Pitt agrees with him and tries to make Ajar change his mind, but Ajar, already consumed by the love he has for Eva, refuses to turn back. Together, they embark on the journey across the desert, following the camel tracks for days and nights. Eva on the other side has lost hope that she would be found and, since she couldn't fight Omar's power, joins the rest of the snakes to practice and perform anytime she was demanded to. Ajar and his friends are already worn out as a result of the journey. They have traveled for days and nights without food and water, and they are famished. Along the way, a glimmer of hope shines for them as they see some humans in the desert. They are couples who are touring across the Sahara. They have a vehicle with a driver, and they also have food and water. Ajar, Pitt, and Gary silently find their way into the vehicle. Soon the vehicle starts, and they all drive toward their destination. The driver notices the presence of the snakes in the truck, and this makes the passengers get scared and very uneasy. He finally gets a hold of them and flings them outside the window into the desert. Once again, Ajar and Gary are in the desert, but Pitt is in the car as it drives far away from them. Ajar is very upset and confronts Gary about his bad character. This results in a little fight between both snakes, after which they continue on their journey. At the cavalcade, during dance practice, Eva learns that some snakes have been captives under Omar for so many years. This knowledge makes her come face to face with the fact that no one is indeed coming to save her. Pietra, who has been jealous of how Eva has taken her spot and also how George flirts with her, advises Eva to run away. She shows her a hole in the basket which she can escape through. This plan is an epic fail and both Eva and Pietra are caught. Across the desert, there is good news for Ajar and Gary as they find a small oasis. They happily slither towards it to refresh themselves and regaining strength for their journey the next day. Omar arranges a dancing competition between Eva and Pietra and decides to spare the best dancer. Luckily for Eva, she wins the competition and she's spared. But Pietra is put alongside the snakes that would be used to manufacture belts and shoes. Pitt, the scorpion, finds other scorpions in the desert and tells of his adventure. He also tells them about his friend Ajar, who is searching for. Pitt and the other scorpions overhear the tourists talking about dancing snakes in a village named Sauksaukville. He enters their vehicle to head there too. Back at the little oasis, Gary and Ajar discover a well that leads to Sauksaukville. They decide to swim through it. Ajar was a bit skeptical, but he had no choice because a desert storm was approaching. Omar has arrived at his home in the village with Eva and the other snakes, who he locked up in cages. Ajar and Gary arrive in Sauksaukville through the other end of the well, and they head quickly to Omar's house to rescue Eva. They gain access to the house through the rooftop, and Ajar sees Eva in an intimate position with George, so he gets jealous and disappointed. But through some encouraging words from Gary, he releases Eva and the other snakes. Omar sees this and reaches for his charming flute to hypnotize them, but Ajar gets it before him and absconds with it. Outside the house, with a fiery storm raging, Omar chases Ajar to get back his flute. Ajar does his best to evade the snake charmer and also protect himself. They run across houses and roofs in the village while the storm was still blowing hard, and in the middle of the tussle, the flute breaks into half and this gets Omar very furious. His furiousness makes him lose balance and he falls. He reaches out to grab Ajar's tail so he wouldn't fall, and it was in this process that Ajar shed his first skin. Omar falls to the ground as he no longer held Ajar, but his shed skin. Tired, Ajar falls faints on the floor as the storm passes. Eva and Gary appear looking for Ajar and calling his name. They find him collapsed on the floor and are downtrodden because they feel he is dead. A few moments later, Ajar regains consciousness and they are all elated. He shows off his new skin, which hurt a little. Their happy reunion is interrupted by the appearance of Omar, who tries to attack them. Gary steps in to defend them, but Omar suddenly falls into a deep sleep. Appearing behind him is Pitt, who apparently fell asleep as a result of Pitt's sting. It is a beautiful and heartwarming reunion as the old friends introduce each other to the new ones they met along the journey. Ajar, Pitt, Eva, Gary, and a few of their new friends travel back to their homes in a vehicle headed toward the Sahara. The end. If you love this video, please leave a like and subscribe.